Three, two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore, where we are having another night to celebrate our 5 years of being here online for you, ladies and gentlemen, if not for ourselves and our own entertainment. But our good friend Mo here has another film that he had to show us and subject us to this week. So, Mo, why don't you tell us a little bit about that film and why you chose this?
All right. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about the 1972 classic Lone Wolf and Cub, Sword of Vengeance. It's the first film in a 6-film series that was shot between 1972 and 1974. It is a samurai film starring Tomisaburo Wakayama, or Tommy Dubs, as I've affectionately dubbed him, Akihiro Tomikawa, Fumio Watanabe, Shigeru Suyaguchi, and many, many others. A lot of people that you've seen in Toho movies in the past and various other samurai films. It was directed by Kenji Misumi, based on a screenplay by Kazuo Koike, who also wrote the Lone Wolf and Cub manga, which the film is based on. It's got cinematography by Chisi Makura, music by Aiken Sakurai, and it was produced by the Katsu, production house and distributed by Toho, with a release date of 15th of January 1972. I've got a long history with this film, which we'll get into after we get through your guys' first impressions. But I just kind of wanted to throw this in there to represent sort of the sword slinging end of the martial arts fandom. We did the Street Fighter with Sonny Chiba last week to kind of cover the sort of basic martial arts. And I just thought that this would be a good pairing to go with it. Also, I felt that it would be a good excuse for a lot of us that got the criterions and hadn't really dug into them yet to maybe get the ball rolling with those sets. So I guess we'll do our first impressions before we dive into the plot and all that. Dave, I assume this wasn't your first time watching this. What's sort of your history in general?
Yes, it was. It was, in fact, my first time watching it. It was, in fact, my first time watching it. Cracked open the set, and well, I had it open because you told me about the mysterious spine thingamabobber that came with the Criterion set.
Yeah,
but
so cool.
That's about all I was able to do. So I am glad that you chose this film so that I can finally start the baby cart phenomenon.
Nice, very nice.
I really liked this film. I liked that, that no holds barred. They actually cut some limbs on screen. That was pretty damn nice. I mean, it wasn't quite the Knights of Nim from Monty Python, but but I really liked the various things that the samurai could do. But a lot of it was not by choice. I do like the fact that oh, here we go.
Looks like we got another edition. There we go.
Hey guys, sorry.
Hey,
no worries, bud.
We're just going through my first impression, and I do like the fact that that it was the samurai toting his kid around. It's kind of like a father-son thing going on, and the kid was very young. I mean, he probably should not be understanding what his father was trying to teach him, to choose this like doomed path or to be or choose to what is it be killed and go along with his mother.
The demon's way in hell. Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of dark and deep and like something that you would not expect a father to tell their little tiny youngling, at that age, because he was still like crawling, he was
give him that option then,
two legs yet.
Right. He's a quick study too, man. Daigoro. He gets he amasses quite a body count of his own throughout the series. So obviously nowhere near his dad.
I believe it.
Yeah. There's some of the best bits in the whole series are with Daigoro, and I always found that little kid's involvement in these movies fascinating because go ahead.
I enjoyed this first installment. I mean, you got to see how, in fact, that baby cart was able to be used to its full extent, at least in that, like, ending battle, So I really enjoyed it.
He makes some additions to that card over the course of the series as well. It's like a Swiss Army knife by the end of the shit. And it's already in a pretty crazy place right when we start out here. So if you thought that was cool, you're going to enjoy those sequels.
Swiss baby tank.
So I guess... What's that? Oh, yeah, pretty much Swiss baby tank. That's a good way to put it. I mean, I don't want to spoil any of it. There's some rad fucking modifications that he makes to it later. And even a part where he rides it down a snowy mountain like a fucking bobsled. So,
if you saw anything of the blueprints that came with the Criterion set, you can actually see that it's got part on it,
there's all types of different compartments and contraptions attached to it and hidden weaponry and all that good stuff.
Too bad they couldn't sell you a baby cart with it.
That would be cool. Statues of him and Daigoro, and then like a little baby cart replica that you can actually take apart and reconfigured in different ways and shit. I would probably spend on a very unreasonable amount of money on that. For those of you guys that aren't aware, or perhaps Jake, since he just got his, there is a hidden blueprint for the baby cart in the spine of the Criterion slipcover that if you very carefully pull it out of there, you can look at it. And it's a really cool hidden extra. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in a box set before. I didn't know it was there for ages. And then someone told me about it on Facebook and I was like, what? No, they've got to be pulling my leg. And no, for sure, there's a hidden compartment in the spine of that slip with the blueprints in there. So pretty neat. So moving on to you, Jake, this was one of a couple attempts to watch this film, but what are your overall thoughts on it and impression of it? And it has intrigued you to check out the other ones in the very least.
Right. Well, this actually was not a recent acquisition. If you recall, I actually picked it up, I want to say last July for the Criterion sale. And I knew that it was going to eventually show up on the show because you keep talking about it so much. And also, even if you didn't know about that little feature, it's still a pretty cool looking set. Oh, and beautiful. I love my Criterion stuff, and I felt like it was an essential and whatever. And I actually did make an effort to watch it, I think just under a year ago. And it was not a good day for me to be watching it. I kind of drifted off to sleep, and, I saw probably a little more than half of it. And then today, unfortunately, I was dog tired, and I also drifted off a little bit. But I think I saw much of what I missed last time. So, if you put the two together, but this was the second time with this one. And one day I will watch it from start to finish. Honestly, I really want to say this will be the time I launch through the set, but my access to a television is so spotty right now that it may be that it'll sit on the shelf for another year, and then I'll sit down and just marathon all 6 of them, and that could be the way to go. I mean, that might. But
once you start watching them, you're going to want to plow through them because they really pick up after this one.
I know this show definitely has its, or this series definitely has its hardcore fans. I've known other people as well who really get into this one. And actually, speaking of things I need to try again, I was just doing a little bit of research as you were going through the cast, and Tomisaburo Wakayama, our main character, Gami notably, one of his last credits, like one of his last 10 credits, and he was a prolific actor. One of his last credits is a contender if we ever do another Second Chances month. An American film that I actually hated. Just straight up hated. And I really don't know why I hated it. So it might be a contender for a Second Chances month. And that was a film from the late 80s with Michael Douglas called Black Rain. That was actually one of his last credits. So that would be kind of an interesting tie-in, I guess.
It's odd that he didn't do a lot more American films, but I think that's just the way it all was timed. If these had been done in like the 80s, I think that he would have been over here in a lot. Like if it had happened a decade later, I think Tommy Dubs would have been seen in a lot more American action films and shit as just like a sinister Asian villain or something.
Right. He's definitely like I said, he was still definitely prolific. Right up until I think he died in '92, and he's got like 3 or 4 credits from that year. But
him and his brother, old Shintaro Katsu, Zatoichi, the blind swordsman himself. They're no strangers to obviously just doing an insane amount of movies in a small amount of time. This whole franchise was shot in 2 years, and there's 6 movies, so they basically never stopped shooting movies for 2 years.
Dang. Well, yeah, this was and again, I don't want to create the impression that I was particularly bored or anything, because it's actually an interesting movie. It does move slow, but like I said, there's a lot going into that, but it's I've enjoyed it, and it does have some great moments. I noticed more, I think, this time than I did the first time, of just like little moments that really stood out to me, and we'll talk about those as we go along. But yeah, overall, I would say I'm glad I got to take another crack at it. I'm glad we're getting a chance to launch into this one. I'm sure once we get the ball rolling, we'll probably eventually come back around and hit one of the other ones, and so on. I look forward to seeing more of the series and some of those bonus features. You pointed out, there are some good, but I keep forgetting to look for that one you just talked about. I keep forgetting about that. I need to remember.
Shogun Assassin. Yeah, I think that they did the King Kong thing where
I was meaning those blueprints, but yeah, I want to see that too.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, that's pretty much it, I guess, for the first go round.
Right on. So what about you, Kroll? I'm assuming this was your first time watching this. So what were your general thoughts?
Oh yeah, definitely first time watch. You've talked about it a million times. So had to see it. Honestly didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I'm not huge into samurais. It had some moments, and it had a few moments where I laughed. Just cultural differences, I guess. Um, that first scene when he was in, it looked like a giant diaper, and before he killed the little girl. Um, oh boy, whatever it was. It looked like a girl, but it could have been a little boy. I don't know. I laughed at that because it just looked like a giant diaper. Um, you know, all tucked up and shit. The way it was, just I don't know. I found it funny. There's a few of the scenes that I laughed too. I mean, I know it's not a comedy, but like I said,
It's got some humor in it for sure. I mean, there's a whole sequence
just
where kids sing a song about rolling a hard turd down a hill that triggers a flashback. I think
I
there's
knew
some
that
intentional
would.
comedy in there.
I actually didn't laugh at that, but I was just like, why are they?
Oh, I thought it's hysterical. And then afterwards, Daigoro, like it comes back to it, and then he's wheeling him along,
he's
and Daigoro
singing
starts
too.
singing it, and it's like, God
You know-
damn it, that he's like, oh shit.
For some reason,
picked up
when
on
those two girls were singing that, I was just thinking back to Mothra and the twins singing for some reason. And
that's fair. Yeah,
honestly,
it is reminiscent of that.
there's a B movie called Rectuma where it kind of parodies Mothra in a way, except it. Yeah.
I always kind of drew a connection between it and Nightmare on Elm Street because the girls singing the song and like doing the jump rope, and then the whole way it's kind of shot in Lone Wolf is sort of reminiscent to that dreamy quality to how they shoot those jump rope girls in Nightmare. And the fact that it's like all about slicing and dicing and bloodshed and stuff, it makes you wonder if Wes Craven wasn't maybe a fan of it, because it is pretty strikingly similar. But yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. I think as the series progressed, Kroll, you'd probably get more into it because it's really not as dependent on liking samurai as it is just liking sword fights and crazy bloodshed. I mean, most of the series isn't him going against like just other swordsmen. There is those bits, but there's a lot of like crazy ninjas and like zombies and shit like that show up later on that make it just different than other samurai stuff.
I mean, the kid was cute, and it did have that moment where he got to suck someone's tit. That was interesting.
That lady's
but
the kid knows what's good for him.
The kid really didn't do anything in the film itself, and I know he was too young, obviously.
Daigoro is a huge part of the later ones.
Like, right, you said that, so I might like that, But in this first one, he didn't. So, I don't know. Obviously he's not a Jedi, so he's not gonna have any force power or anything. So.
He knows his way around that cart, though, I'll tell you.
But
yeah, man. I mean, this is very much an origin story. It's when you consider that all 6 of them came out in 2 years, nobody was waiting like a long time for the sequel. It was probably like a month or 2 later or something insane, because that's just how they would release movies like these a lot of the time over there. Battles Without Honor and Humanity is another great example of that, where it's like, I think they did like the same amount of movies, but in like even half the time, I think, or not even a full 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, I could see how like if this one just existed on its own, then it was like 2 or 3 years for a sequel, people have probably lost interest and they might not have even made other ones. So it was very smart to do the origin story and then immediately have another movie ready that they shot back to back with it,
Yeah.
And for being an origin story, it's a serviceable origin story. It gets the point across to you. It actually doesn't even like wait to tell you the whole origin before you're dropped into the movie, which I've always thought was cool. The flashbacks for the backstory are kind of going on at the same time as the plot of the actual events in the movie. So yeah, that's kind of a neat way to do it that I think is somewhat, I feel like I've seen it in other stuff before, but
I've definitely seen it in other stuff.
Yeah, it's great to see such an early example of.
I'm not 100% a fan of doing it that way, but it was all right. I mean, it was just the fact that I'm already reading the movie, and then and then they're popping all over the place. So it took me like a minute to realize that they're going backwards and showing you what happened, and it's just like okay, you know, just it's already a busy movie with things, and then they add a little more to it, which is not a bad thing. It's just like I said, it's already me busy because I'm already reading things and trying to watch what's going on and stuff.
I think it does a good job of pacing the movie in a way that where it has like this ebb and flow between calm serenity almost and crazy violence. It's
Well,
a
yeah,
pretty well paced movie
it definitely
altogether.
has slow moments, and it
There
does start out slow.
On
there's
that
slow
note,
moments, but go ahead.
I was going to say just to comment real quick on what I'm hearing, and maybe I'm just looking for a reason to insert this comment. I don't know, but I do feel like a lot of the flashback element could have been handled a little better because the flashbacks at times it's one of those ones that gives you a little bit of a disconnect because you don't always realize it's a flashback until
Right, it's
the
kind of
scene is
jarring.
already yeah. That was one thing I'll say about the film is that there were a couple of times I was like, oh wait, this is a flashback. It throws you out for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose that's fair enough. It might be the type of thing that's more obvious when you rewatch it because it is fairly pronounced when they happen each time. He like sees something that triggers a specific part of that memory. Like the first one is the lady and the baby or whatever, and it makes him obviously think about his wife and the baby. And also, I mean, when he's not in the flashbacks, he's pretty disheveled and walking around like out in nature and shit. And when it is the flashbacks, he's got his full-on robes on and his hair's like all perfect, and so there are some visual cues that are meant to sort of spell that out. Same thing with the ball scene later on when that triggers another flashback. But yeah, I do feel like I kind of remember at first, at least with that first flashback sequence, being like, wait, what the hell happened? But it also does help that they have that intro sequence where he's executing that kid to kind of set it up a little bit. So then when it immediately comes out of the title sequence, which is fucking beautiful, you're immediately greeted with him like now he's for some reason selling his services along random trails. Like what's going on here? And then it gets pieced together obviously as these flashbacks are triggered. But I don't know. I can see how it would be jarring, especially for like the first time through the film. But so yeah, man. I mean, like I said, this is a film that I have a long history with. I was kind of introduced to samurai cinema through like the obvious shit, films like Harikiri or all the Akira Toriyama stuff back in the day. It was right around like I think freshman or sophomore year of high school. And then, obviously I got introduced to the Zatoichi movies as well. And sort of from there, I think actually the Zatoichi movies might have been the first one that my buddy Keegan recommended to me when he found out that I was digging the Kurosawa movies. And so I started watching those, and he's like, if you like these, you're really going to like these. And he recommended Lone Wolf and Cub. Because we're both horror kids, so he knew I liked a fair amount of bloodshed and all that stuff. And he wasn't wrong, man. Over the course of a couple of months, I got all of these in through Netflix in the mail and watched them and just fell in love with them. Unfortunately, back then, acquiring the films physically was no small feat. Nowadays, with the Criterion collection, I think it's still in print. You can snag them all up for, I think, like $60 or $70. And get all those cool special features we alluded to earlier, along with the beautiful packaging and the booklet and all that stuff. And Shogun Assassin, which we've mentioned several times, but it is worth pointing out that it is actually like a recut of the first two films in the series with an English dub and like a badass synth soundtrack, and they kind of change around elements of the story, make it more about like sword and sorcery stuff right out of the gate. So, also a cool alternative for people to start their journey with these films. But I just always loved them, man. By that point, I'd been exposed to like anime and obviously some Tarantino stuff that very clearly draws inspiration from the whole Katsu line of films. You know, you can't deny the influence that the splatter in this film had on all types of Japanese media. If it wasn't for shit like this, we wouldn't have stuff like Machine Girl or things like that that are all about just splattery goodness. I think it had a profound influence on the way violence was portrayed in Japanese media, and it can still be felt to this day, you know. Tommy Dubs is one of the most terrifying humans I've ever laid eyes on. There's no part of me that would ever want to be in front of that dude with a sword in his hands, because even acting, I think I would be afraid of this dude. He gets that fierce look in his eye, and he's like a legitimate world-class swordsman. So I imagine when he's coming at you during those choreography, like fight scenes, there's that small part of you that's really praying that they made sure he's got a stunt sword, you know, because they did accidentally kill a dude making one of the Zatoichi movies because they didn't swap out the stunt sword with the real thing. And when you're dealing with dudes that are swordsmen of this caliber, they're swinging that shit for real. I mean, it's like they're, when you watch this dude in this movie, no part of that swordsmanship is faked. It's just the sword happens to not be razor fucking sharp. But when it is, you know, and they're swinging it like it's not, dudes get dead. But I don't know. There's just a lot of things about this movie that made a big impact on me. And then seeing the sequels obviously just got me even more fired up, because they just progressively get crazier and more violent and fantastical. And I was used to a totally different type of samurai cinema. You know, you don't really see too much of that kind of stuff in like the Kurosawa movies or even other stuff. I mean, violence in sword slinging movies had been a thing. Certainly the Zatoichi movies have some of it in there, but they really took it up a notch once they had their own studio up and running here. And just, you know, of historical note, Shintaro, the older brother, Zatoichi, was doing all those films through Toho, and then eventually just kind of built his own little empire and was able to start Katsu Productions and then start rolling out his own films and have Toho's distribution arm behind him. And so he pretty much, being the amazing nerd that he is, set immediately about adapting a bunch of manga. This is one of at least 3 manga adaptations that they did pretty much right out of the gate. The second one, or I don't know which order they came in anymore, but Lady Snowblood is one of the 3, along with Hanzo the Razor, which is just amazing, and we will definitely have to cover one of these days. But I just always thought that was cool. You know, he's way ahead of his time, I think, in that, going right in there and being like, all right, I love this guy's manga. I'm just going to start adapting all of it, you know. And it's unfortunate that was somewhat short-lived, because I would have liked to have seen, you know, them do some more anime adaptations. I think even stuff like Blade of the Immortal could have been real cool if they had got their hands on it at some point. So I guess before we dive into nailing out the plot and everything here, we can ask you guys what you think of our titular hero. We've touched a little bit on Daigoro, but what do you guys think of old Tommy Dubs and his sword skill?
Definitely very skilled. It wasn't, he never really had much of a sword fight. Pretty much just slaughtered anyone that came at him with a sword.
Right.
They never. So there was never really. I mean, I like sword fights, but he's just like so good that nobody was even that guy that was supposed to be equal to him. You know, he chopped his head off in like 2 seconds. You know, I mean, I had a little help with the thing he put on his son, but still, you know,
Yeah,
well, it's like
super quick.
it's like what was that?
I was just saying, it was just super quick fights and that's fun. But yeah, I mean, they didn't even have like one person that gave them a little bit of a fight that would have made it a little more enjoyable.
The reality is, though, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you look at it, I don't think very many sword fights in feudal Japan lasted longer than 4 or 5 moves. I mean, it's just a difference in the way samurai handle things, you know. They're not in there trying to be like flashy or necessarily do a bunch of like duck and parry shit.
Right, I get that. I get that, but it's just, I mean, when I see
It's more visually appealing later when he's fighting like top level assassins and shit. This one, he really is just dispatching a bunch of fucking henchmen, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I pointed out. I think it might have been for the New York Ninja discussion. It might have been Street Fighter. Might have been both. But it's like I said. Like I had a fencing instructor who straight said that anytime that the movies get it wrong, because anytime you have a sword fight, people are going for the kill. They're going for the point. They're not trying, the flash is for the cameras. It's for the people at home. It has nothing to do with the actual fight. And definitely, like, you have this one scene here where the guy is, in a sense, interviewing him as an assassin. And he had his own assassons try to sneak in.
That was cool.
And he took them out like without even breaking a sweat.
He didn't even move. He didn't even get out.
He didn't move. Yeah.
He just like sat there and was like, and they're dead.
Oh, I love it, dude.
Yeah.
The scene I've slow-moed
He was like swish.
Yeah. Exactly. But it's like very little wasted movement. Very little.
Even when he went up against the dudes who were trying to attack him with that old guy, each move that he made, he was killing at least one person.
Oh yeah. No wasted moves at all.
Like, it's like he didn't need to like swipe at them at all, very much at all. So it was.
Hell, he even killed that dude and broke the door at the same time. So no wasted moments. 2 for 1.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful, especially in further analysis of it when you start realizing that I'm sure they weren't single takes, but I'm sure it took many takes to get some of these. But when you watch a lot of those fight sequences throughout the series, most of the time, like the whole sequence happens in like one fluid shot, kind of, and then it'll switch to, there'll be a thing to cut it. So then they're outside and then a whole nother fluid combat shot starts. And I think that's definitely from just how schooled they were at doing it. Because even by this point in the 70s, there was probably fucking like 15 Zatoichi movies under their belt already. So they'd been just fighting with swords for like the whole entire previous decade. And it really comes to shine in these films, because there's some massive fights later and they basically do them in one shot, But yeah, he's a fearsome man. I think only topped as far as like swordsmen that I've ever seen on film by like his brother. The Zatoichi movies are the only ones I can think of that have as impressive swordsmanship in them, shot in the way that it is. Where it's like it's believable as real swordsmanship because it just is. It's not a bunch of like Hollywooded up nonsense of different cuts and quick cuts to make it look like they're better with the swords than they are. A lot of samurai movies are guilty of that because a lot of those dudes aren't like actual trained swordsmen, they're just actors.
Yeah, you definitely can tell the guy is trained.
Yeah, to deadly precision. So yeah, just good stuff, man. I mean, he's got a striking image to him. He's not who you assume is going to be a dashing hero because that's not even the character that he's playing at all.
He doesn't look like a dashing hero at all. He looks more like a dad that would be sitting at home or maybe watching some TV. Like he's definitely a dad, but the assassin part does not look at all the assassin part.
Right,
but he is, and I love that he does make one comment. He's like, "You guys are gonna kill me with your skinny arms," and,
yeah, that was good.
And they were all hesitant. They're like, "Kill him," and they didn't even like move. At
first, I thought he was a thicker guy, but when he was standing there with those bare ass cheeks, He was just a stocky dude, you know.
Oh yeah, there's
Yeah.
muscle
Right.
under there, but he definitely has that like plump dad bod like appearance
exactly.
to him, which just makes it even more badass that he's so deadly. You know,
Yeah,
best
like I said,
eyebrows
he
in the
doesn't-
game too. I'll tell you.
He has that more look that you know you find sitting in a dad sitting at home or watching TV and something or than the assassin look at all. So he definitely has that. I like that the whore he saves. They're all like, oh, he fucked you to save them. Like, no, he didn't. He fucked me
Osan?
to save my life. I was all prepared to kill myself, and he took pity. He saw that, and he did it to save my life. And she saw
Oh, that's
that.
one of the most savage
And-
bits in the
and-
movie where
and-
she's like, "Could you stay hard if you were in fear of your life?" Pretty much.
Right. And they're all like, "Oh shit!" Like
He was cool as a cucumber. If
Yeah.
you could tell.
yeah.
Yeah.
She was She was definitely satisfied by him. So yeah, she definitely knew that.
Oh yeah, she's one of the many women that try to follow these dudes at the end of the movie. Just gets shot.
It
That's
was
a long
kind of
tradition from
funny.
Zatoichi as well.
She tries to follow him, and he's like acts like he's gonna cut the rope, and she's like, "No, bitch.
Yeah.
How'd you want some bitch?"
Yeah.
I kind of like I said, I kind of liked her, and she figured out who he was right away too. She was smart. She wasn't your typical whore. She was kind of a decent character. They had some. I think she didn't want to fuck him because he was a samurai, and I guess she figured it out, and like she didn't want to taint him, I guess, and so she had honor, even though that was shit she did for a living.
She had more respect for him. She has more respect for him than those other prisoners of.
Yeah, because she realized what he was, and that's why she said, when he got off, and he's like, you can have me such and such as I am. Like I don't deserve you, but if that's what you want to do, then
yeah, it's a good look into the difference in class, I guess, in Japanese society and stuff like that. Like to all those other people, he's very clearly a Ronin, which usually means that they're samurais that aren't good enough to have a master for whatever reason, haven't gotten one yet, or they're disgraced and wandering because they didn't have the balls to like kill themselves basically after failing whatever master they had. So there's definitely a lot of like.
But he never failed, so it was.
He
they
was
don't know
basically
that. They just know he's a wandering
excommunicated executioner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He I mean, he was framed. He was definitely disgraced in a sense.
And they
even
killed his
though
fucking wife for no reason.
yeah, they but the film is kind of interesting. Like he's this guy that on the one hand he does have that you guys mentioned, like this sort of intimidating kind of power. Like he has a sort of charisma about him. And you kind of want to, and the thing that was done to him is such a dastardly asshole thing that just, he's framed, his whole family is slaughtered, his entire household is just slaughtered except for him and the kid. And it's just, they probably would have killed the kid if it was with the mother instead of him.
Oh yeah, they definitely killed the kid.
And it's just, but on the other hand, we already talked about his threat to that girl that wanted to follow him. She was really damn cute. So, on the one hand, you're kind of torn. You're kind of like, well, this is good. He does his own thing. He does what he wants. And you don't want a groupie following him. But on the other hand, you're like, but damn, she was cute. Does this guy?
Yeah, it probably would have helped to have someone around to help, with the kid,
But I was going to say that
his wife was like a 4 and she was a solid 7. So
right. What's that?
I said his wife was like a 4 and she was
no. His wife was like a 6.
Nice tits.
His
like
wife
that
was
too.
like
They're
a
okay.
6. I think that one at the end was he was really hot. But anyway, so like I said, it kind of ends the movie with a little bit of me questioning his taste, but it starts the movie with me very much questioning his taste. We talked about this bit before we started. It is a ballsy franchise that introduces its protagonist as a child killer. And that's what they do. They,
yes.
you know.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's more okay. Yeah, that is shocking, but the deal is, I guess now's a good time to jump into the plot.
Yeah.
But the deal is basically that Ogami Ito is the Kaikushin or whatever the fuck they say. Basically, he's the
Yeah.
main executioner for the shogunate, which is
Right.
like the government. He's
Yeah.
the guy that's in
Yeah.
charge of carrying out all of the official executions. So, unfortunately, with Japanese society back then, they had a lot of boy princes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes their house would get disgraced or fail the shogunate in some way, or as we see in this film, get manipulated into a bad place because of, backroom political dealings. And for whatever reason, in Japan, they were huge fans of just sentencing everyone to death for a long time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
wouldn't
why
think
they
that-
killed the kid in the beginning, because I guess it is a little boy. Like I said, I thought it was a little girl, but still, I was just like, why did they kill this little kid? Like, I don't like. I never really got that why they killed the kid.
Right.
Some offense
Well-
that house committed or failure that they incurred that they had to pay for in blood, man. That was part of their fucking society back then, was a lot of just ritual suicide and executions.
But
So he just goes in and does his
Yeah.
duty, and they do a very careful job of making it very clear that he has reverence for these people that he has to do this with. He handles it respectively. He's got a whole shrine in his back garden that he prays to their souls. So that's the dual-edged sword of Japanese culture of the time.
And that dude who was the instrument of the frame up, the guy, the local inspector or whatever, who was there to frame him. They planned it, as he pointed out. He's like, if you guys rushed over here, why he wouldn't have chainmail on, but
they were prepared for all this.
But he talked about the shrine is where I pray for the souls of the people that I have been second to, I think is what he called it.
Yeah.
And the inspector actually he pauses and compliments him for doing that. And it's like you kind of get the impression that even the inspector, even though he knows what he's on about, he actually might have been a bit impressed by that.
He respected him.
A little bit, yeah. And then there's another part. I called him a child. I kind of overstated it just because, again, you don't see an American film starting that way.
No way.
No.
And then, but then later, he's straight up. That flashback you talked about with the ball, where he basically puts his sword down and he puts a colorful ball down and tells his infant son to choose what path he will take in life.
Yeah, I thought that was
and then the son crawled toward the sword, and you see him crying and almost like he's like, I kind of wish you had taken the other one to join your mother, because this is no life for a kid. Right. And it's like, it's on the one hand, it is effed up as hell that he was willing to kill his own son, but on the other hand, and that he put that weird little test down in front of an infant to choose. But on the other hand, you can tell that it was a weighty decision, and that in his mind, he thought that death would be the better path for the kid. It's
right.
And I don't really necessarily agree with that viewpoint, but I do give the movie props for being willing to have a protagonist like that.
Well, and that calls back to the thing you guys were mentioning about him turning the girl down. I don't think it's entirely that he wouldn't want someone to help him with the kid. or he wouldn't like to settle down with a new woman or something. But they've chose this path of vengeance, and that's made very clear in the sequels. And Daigoro does have to pull his own weight, and there's several times where he almost fucking dies or gets pretty fucked up.
It didn't help.
And he probably doesn't want to curse another person to walk the path of the demon from hell, like he says that him and his son is doing. So telling the woman, basically, he doesn't say anything, but basically saying no to her. He's not letting her give up her soul per se in what they're doing. Because
he's not trying to curse her to the same path. What's that, Dave?
It didn't help that the knife throwing dude had instigated it to begin with, because he wanted to see what kind of samurai he really was, because if he really was not like attacking him or anything, then he was in fact insulting him. So he basically we was like, well, okay, then why don't you have sex with the Ronin here in public so that we can be entertained,
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. They're a pretty greasy lot of hooligans that we get introduced to once he makes it to the hot spring. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that whole thing with the girl following after him is as prevalent in this. I feel like in the Zatoichi movies, it's like every other movie. The chick is trying to follow Zatoichi, and he'll just see Ichi like all blind climbing a fucking mountain next to the trail so that he can avoid the chick.
And then and definitely this isn't like James Bond where it's the opposite at the end of every movie. But real quick, I just noticed here, and I did anyone notice? I don't know if anyone noticed, and I might have missed it, but I see we got a hey from Cody in the comments. So if no one said anything, then hey, half hour late, but hey.
So essentially, the gist of the plot is that the Yagyu clan, who is the clan, there's 3 different clans that basically handle all the dirty work for the shogunate. There's Ogami, the Ito clan, who are the executioners. There's the Yagyu clan, who is the assassins. And then there is like the sort of espionage type dudes who are the 3rd clan, the spies, which I forget their name right now, but they do.
There's also the Han. The Han clan, which is evidently the line of lineage that lordling child that he killed in the beginning was part of.
Well, right. I mean, there's all types of clans. There's dozens of them, but I mean, in terms of like the ones that are the main arms of this shogunate government, there's those 3, and then the shogunate itself. And, they're always vying for power in feudal Japan. That was like their main hobby or whatever. So, the Yagyu clan wants to basically dethrone
everyone
Ito
needs a
from
hobby.
His seed. Yeah, right. Little trying to fucking seize territory and power, I guess, back before TV and the internet. That was just what people were always doing.
Well, this was what they called the Warring States period, wasn't it? Or thereabouts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why so many of these movies that are set in this time period have a somewhat similar through line of plots about like this clan is trying to assassinate this dude from this clan so they can seize control of like fucking rice or dye or bamboo or some bullshit, and just get more power politically. So the Yagyus have basically set up Ito where they come in, they kill his wife. They have these 4 samurai dudes commit seppuku at the castle gates with this fake letter basically accusing him of wanting to destroy the shogunate. While they were assassinating his wife, they had snuck a little memorial plaque with the crest of the shogunate on it into his death shrine. And they basically pretty expertly frame him up to make it look like, this dude has been plotting the downfall of the government and to try to seize control. Obviously, this isn't true. Go ahead.
Quick mention. I think I missed this maybe on my first watch, but I definitely noticed it this time. Like I said, there were like little moments that I really enjoyed throughout. And one that I really enjoyed here is he's at the shrine. Like he and his wife have had a little bit of a spat, and and he takes the kid with him over to the shrine to pray to the souls of the people that he has dispatched. And while he's praying, he hears a bell, I guess you could call it. I'm sure there's a better term, but anyway. And he's like, "Oh, it's just a wandering monk doing evening prayers or something like that." And he thinks nothing of it. But the monk is part of the conspiracy, and the monk, and there's 3 ninjas there. And this was, I thought, really, really cool. The ninjas' movements were timed with the bell,
yeah.
So that when he did the clang, they would move. And so he couldn't hear them because it was timed with the bell. And I thought that was just a brilliant bit of tactics. And I thought that was fun.
It's also an eerie looking scene too.
Yeah.
It's done at night. It looks like the dude's got like this old it's not just the bell. It looks like he's got like an old lantern that he's moving through, like
well, he does, yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah.
So I do like that moment too.
Yeah, it's great, dude. I mean, it gives it a real sense of impending doom too, because some type of violence is going to be visited on someone, but it's like slow plotting, like with the rhythm of those bell chimes. It almost gives it like a Jaws kind of a dun dun kind of a thing, and then he, needless to say, is quite shocked to find his wife murdered and no one around to have his vengeance upon. And we get some quality acting from Tommy Dubs right there. That's something I've always found pretty striking about the dude, is how he can actually pretty convincingly cry when he needs to, but he does it in like a stoic, tough way, where even though he's shedding some tears, you don't feel like any less terrified by the dude. So basically he lays Daigoro down to have like one last sleep with his mom. And the investigators for the shogunate end up showing up and basically presenting him with this letter that these samurai delivered before they committed suicide, accusing him of this plot. They go out into his prayer shrine and they find the thing, and that's kind of where we get to the scene that Jake alluded to earlier, where they're accusing him of plotting this, and he's like, no, that's bullshit, this was never in here, and why are you guys already prepared to like fight me? If you were coming here thinking there's going to be violence, you would have just showed up with the weapons out in the open. There's no reason to conceal them. And then it turns out that they're all like geared up in chainmail, and he's none too happy about this. He just pretty much proceeds to fucking send the guys through a deli slicer. Tons of cool bamboo trees getting chopped down as he's running through the fucking garden. I absolutely love that first bloodbath of the film there.
And it really moves into a water course nearby, and apparently he's like sort of like a whiz with using water as part of the what's the word I'm looking for? I can't. Whatever. He's good with water. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, particular sword.
Yeah.
You get the old man up on the bridge, and he's like, "You fool! You let him get in the water."
Indeed.
Retsudo talks like a very old man, because he looks like one, but that is perpetually constipated, and he sounds that way until throughout the entire series. He's like,
right.
It takes forever to get his dialogue out. But yeah, he's got the wave slicer technique or whatever. I think they explain it later on in the other movies, but and they touch on it in this one, like his particular sword is like a Don Ryu sword or some shit, and it's designed to be able to like cut through bone without damaging the blade, and it's long enough you can use it either on a horse or fighting dudes that are on horses. So that's the whole basis of his, or fighting in situations like the water where maybe you need a little bit better reach to make the difference in the situation because you're encumbered with your movements or whatever. So his whole
Right.
style is basically designed around utilizing the extra distance and power that sword gives him. And it's pretty neat, you know. And it's used to great effect later when he is fighting dudes on horses and stuff. And I think we do get some mounted combat from Tommy Dubs at some point as well. So a good foreshadowing for later on. But that's one of my favorite scenes, is that opening bloodbath and then it culminating with that water battle. The way it's shot is so picturesque, you know, with them on that like eddy thing or whatever.
Yeah, I do like the water battle.
Yeah. Almost puts you in the mood to go fishing.
Right? It looked like a hell of a swimming spot too for just wading around and like cooling off.
Oh man, and today was so sweltering hot. I would have loved to have gone swimming.
We get a lot of water scenes in this series though that aren't combat as well, like him and Daigoro just playing. I like at the beginning where it shows them like I think it's the beginning where it shows them like splashing him in the hot spring or whatever. And it just looks like it had to have been so much fun for this little kid to be on all 6 of these movies in the span of 2 years. He's young enough, you can tell he probably doesn't remember like vividly a ton of it, but I like to think that there's that inkling in his mind, like, did I grow up in feudal Japan? You know, like,
he looked like he was having fun, especially in that final bloodbath scene. The look in his eyes.
I would have thought that his best memory would have been suckling that woman's tit.
Maybe,
you know,
he might have still been getting breastfed by his mom at that point, though, too. So that might.
Well, it was still strange shit. So yeah.
Yeah, but still, when you're that age, you're not gonna be thinking about that, you know. If he was a little older,
more of like the animals and the swords and stuff like that, you know, and then probably a lot of really good memories with Tommy Dubs, because as you watch the movies throughout too, like even right out of the gate, him and that little kid have a good chemistry, you know.
Indeed.
It looks like the kid really had an affection for him, and that just kind of grows throughout the movies. So I'm sure I hope that he stayed in touch with that little kid long into his adulthood, you know. I suppose we'll never know, but you know, it would be neat if that indeed was the case. But yeah, pretty much right after that, you know, is where he slaughtered a bunch of government officials, like solidly, probably a couple of dozen of them, maybe. And he knows that they're going to be coming back in force to deal with him, you know. So he gets him and Daigoro all set up in their ceremonial white funeral robes, and he gives them that choice to choose between the ball and the sword. He ends up choosing the sword, obviously, as we've touched on. I think in reality, there wasn't much of another option for him. I mean, if you go based on what you see in other stuff, like these types of movies where they try to like smuggle a kid into someone's care, it always gets found out, you know. So best case scenario, he would have had like a friend he could have dropped Daigoro off with, and then they would have found him and assassinated him eventually anyways, because their whole plan was to erase his line. And he's not going to have that happen. In fact, his plan is to visit the same thing upon the Agu clan. So, you know, once that decision is made, they patiently await for the officials to come back and deliver his arrest warrant, and then he just sends another group of dudes through the fucking meat slicer, but this time in much more glorious fashion. You know, those white robes getting all splattered with blood. The fact that the bloodbath was probably twice as much blood just by volume, and you know, it culminates in him pulling a pretty crafty move to stop them from being able to gang up on him outside of the gates, where he has the whole robe with the imperial crest on it or whatever, so they can't attack him while he's wearing it, and they're sort of forced to make this deal with him where they'll put their best swordsman against him in a formal duel. If he loses, obviously he's dead. If he wins, he can, you know, go out and make his living however he wants. He just has to stay out of Edo, which go ahead.
This next scene here is like my second favorite scene, to
glorious.
be honest. Because you get this whole thing spread out by the old man, that this is going to be an interesting fight. You've got the one guy that's got the real sun on his back, and the other guy has got the sun in the sky on his back, and he's like he's very very sure how this fight is going to happen, and he is just as surprised as I was.
Yeah, you assume that the son is going to be an advantage, but it's not the son that you think at the end, which also does really show how he's willing to put Daigoro in some dicey situations and even put his life on the line. Because, they're both on this path together, man. It's not just him. The kid is just as much on that demon path, so if he can use him to his advantage or sometimes as a decoy or various things like that, it definitely happens. And I mean, if the dude hadn't been immediately blinded by it or had just blindly swung, he'd have chopped that little kid's head off, probably still would have lost his own head, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it was not the safest solution to that situation, but it was definitely a clever one. And that slow motion blood just fucking like a geyser spurting out of that dude's neck with the sun, like the sunset behind it. And that field is one of the most iconic pieces of samurai imagery ever, and that basically sets up the main bulk of the movie. We kind of covered all of the flashback sequences in proper sequence. When you actually watch the film, they're peppered throughout it in between segments of the main story. But this is essentially how he's able to just wander the countryside and, make his living as a sword for hire and a son for hire with their little baby cart, The only deal is that he's not allowed to go to Edo, which I believe wasn't that basically like Tokyo, Jake?
What's that?
Edo, isn't Edo what is like today Tokyo? Like the main sort of province or the main county or however you want to look at it of Japan? I'm not super well versed with feudal geography.
I'm wanting to say
what it was.
I'm wanting to say Ida. Are you sure Ida? Oh wait. It was okay. That was okay. It's that's an old school name for what would become Tokyo. Yeah. But it's also the name of an era in Japan, and that's why I was a little bit confused there.
Right.
Yeah,
the Edo period or whatever. You do hear that a lot. I think that might be when Samurai Champloo is set, if I remember right. Again, not well versed on those. I don't know what order the different eras of Japan go in. I just know when they're samurais and when they're badass, sleazy fucking gangsters. That's all I know about these kinds of movies.
Edo is also called the Tokugawa period, and that's from 1603 to 1867.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's basically the conditions of this. He can go wherever he wants, supposedly unmolested, even though the Yagyus immediately break that part of the promise in the second movie.
Of course.
I don't want to spoil too much of that, but I'm sure you guys could see that coming. But, he's basically got free roam of the entire country with the exception of Edo. So he sets about doing sword for hire shit. The deal with it is you can hire Lone Wolf and Cub for 500 Ryo. Doesn't matter how many people you need them to kill. It could be fucking 10. It could be 100. You just got to pay them their 500. And the only specification is you have to tell him all the details behind why you want this done. And there are times later where he refuses because it doesn't jive with his morals or whatever. He doesn't just take any job, and he won't. He won't allow himself to be like cross contracted. So if you've hired him and like your rivals try to hire him instead, he's just going to turn down their money and kill him.
Yeah, he's a proper assassin.
Yeah, he's still got his honor, even though he's technically disgraced and wandering. He's still got his code of conduct and all that. So essentially the gist of this is, the plot, the main sort of assassination job for this movie. And that tends to be how these are set up. There will be a job that he's hired to do. We get the backstory of all that. We get the whole journey of him going to complete it. And then typically we'll get like some side story from the opposing side of this job. And that tends to be how the movies are configured for the most part throughout the series. It's very similar to a lot of the Zatoichi films. But they add in some cool elements to these later that make them a little bit different. But the gist of this one is there's this sickly lord that's traveling around his dominion for the first time or whatever. And this other family that's trying to pull a Yagyu on his ass basically wants to assassinate him so that they can seize control. Through their informants, this Lord's clan has figured out that they've set up shop at this particular hot spring along the route that the Lord is traveling on, and they're waiting there to ambush them and assassinate them. So these people, after testing him out to make sure this is indeed Ogami Ito, the famed lone wolf and cub, they hire him to do this. He accepts the job and he sets out to head to this hot spring so that he can be there when this main dude orchestrating the shit shows up to.
They do have a scene that you left out a little bit right before that where they're talking about if it's really him and basically the two guys are like.
No, I mentioned it. I mentioned that we had already mentioned it, but we can talk about it again.
The two guys said that they would be happy. It would be better to give their life, meaning it's better that if it really is who they think it is. And I don't know. I thought that was interesting how how they said that. They're like
the one dude did not look stoked that he had to die.
Right, but it wasn't saying. They were like they have to give their life, and they're like, and it would be better if they do because it is who they wanted, because they knew they had no choice on. They wouldn't be able to probably take out the guy that they need the people that they need to take out, but if they hired him, then they would be able to do it, and it worked out for them.
Yeah, it is good that you circled us back around to that, actually, because one thing we didn't mention even the first time we talked about it is that their reputation is cemented at this point. There is a substantial skip in time between the flashback sequences and where we're actually at in the movie. Daigoro, for one, is clearly aged at least a couple of years, and they've got this reputation of being this super dependable assassin duo that you can hire. There's rumors already going around that it is Ogami Ito, which is why these guys want to test him to make sure. And the reason they think they can't take out these assassins is because the main dude that the conniving, backstabbing underlord hired to kill the sickly lord is backed up by a whole gang of fucking basically road pirates. There's a dude with throwing knives. There's this guy that has pistols and shit. I mean, just way too much.
Another one with a chain and a hook.
Yeah, and some badass eyebrows
to kill some dude when he's fucking the girl, the dude's daughter. Yeah.
Should also touch on what the hot springs is actually called, too.
Oh, the Bat Springs.
Yeah, the Bat. Because
the way she explained it.
It's not until the hot
bat has wings, but it's not a bird. It has fangs, but it's not a beast, and so it doesn't really belong. And that's why they call it the Bat Springs, because the people that are there don't really belong.
I love that she goes through that whole explanation too, and he just sits there and doesn't respond. He's like, okay. I'm trying to take a bath here, lady. Yeah, basically, it's a very popular hot spring. There's a village situated around it. There are several, regular people that come through there. It just so happens that for whatever reason, when these bandits showed up at said hot springs, they scared all of the locals into their homes and took captive a whole group of people. I guess basically everybody that's just been stopping at the hot springs, they've been just taking hostage and keeping in this, one of the main inn buildings or whatever. And when Tommy Dubs and Daigoro show up, they end up as part of this group of people. He's able to pretty much convince them, at least at first, that he's just this wandering chubby samurai trying to take his son to the hot spring. So they just kind of confiscate his sword and they're like, don't fuck around or we'll kill you, pretty much. And that leads us into the whole sequence we talked about earlier, where the knife throwing dude gets heated at him, tries to challenge him to a fight. Osan, I believe her name is, the concubine lady or whatever, ends up, basically convincing him not to do it, and then he forces him to have sex, all that. And he's basically just biding his time, because the whole deal is he could just take out all these henchmen or whatever. Yeah. But he's got to wait until the betraying fucking underlord dude that hired him shows up, so that he can take them all out one fell swoop. And
Right.
that's pretty much what goes down. He bides his time until that
Well,
dude
yeah,
shows up,
he
and
even
then
gives a different name to like the leader of these rogue pirate dudes, and he's like, "I swear, I've seen this."
Yeah, the lady's kind of recognizes, but he doesn't know where. I love when it dawns on him, and he's like, "Oh fuck, like we're screwed." Like he's all like, "Don't attack him, don't anything," like. Just,
He even gives him his sword back, and he's like, "Here, I'm not even part of this fucking shit. Don't touch me."
oh,
Yeah.
I love that. And he stabs him with a spear, and he like spits blood all over the camera lens. It's not often I love those types of scenes where the camera lens gets splattered, but that's one I definitely give my stamp of approval to. Because sometimes it can just look cheap, especially if they don't actually splatter the lens and they try to do it with CGI. It's got its place. It doesn't always work, but it worked real good in this one. And that whole last bloodbath is pretty great. It's not as impressive in terms of like sheer blood volume as a couple of the previous ones, but we see the baby cart come into action. And, we see some of his various contraptions that he's got involved in that. Really, it's just that big, long staff that can like split into two different weapons. We only see one portion of it in this one, I think.
I keep thinking about the guy that he sawed off like his legs, and you can just see the stumps. Like,
And he didn't finish that guy off either, so he's probably just laying in the background groaning fucking legless at the end of the movie. He never gives him the killing stroke. He just moves on to dice up more dudes. But I love that staff he has. I love how the handles to the baby cart are both daggers. I mean, we get a good plethora of weaponry in this. And it's got a bulletproof steel plate on the bottom of it to be used as a shield whenever necessary. Just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to baby cart gadgets and weaponry, but man, is it ever a solid start?
Yeah, and that last dude, he tries to run away, but he throws a spear, and it stops him so that he can't go nowhere.
Yeah, he did break out the spear part of the staff, because at the one end it's like a long blade. It's practically a sword of its own. Yeah. And then the other end of it is just a straight spear. I for some reason thought he threw the other one, but yeah, he does fully throw the spear.
Yep.
So we basically get the full debut of his hand-to-hand implements that he has on the cart, as well as the steel-plated bottom. Again, just tip of the iceberg. I feel like I'm doubling down on the baby cart a lot, but there's just so much rad shit in it. Dave's seen the blueprints, so he knows.
I actually agree. It is pretty badass. The cart is. I liked the cart. It was very interesting.
It's a character in itself by the end of the series. I mean, it goes through some shit too. But yeah, then that kind of brings us around to that final scene where the girl is trying to follow him, and he's not having any of that. And he just wanders back down the trail on to the next job, and that's it. Credits roll. So what do you guys think?
Yeah.
I guess, now we can talk about any key scenes that we missed as we do favorites and stuff. But in general, what do you guys think about the whole, the whole bloodbath at the hot spring and the culmination of that? You think everybody got what they deserved?
Sure.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think one of my favorite bits about it is how there's that other samurai guy that's been like hanging out the whole time.
Yeah.
And at the end, they give him back his sword, and they're like, "All right, you can fight us. We'll let you die like a warrior." And he's like, "I would do it, but I'm too sick." What a pussy.
I rather just kill myself. Yeah, I know he was definitely put a bad name on samurai. Like he was just kind of like a punk.
That brings me to a good point, though, because that is, I think, the third time that they mention seppuku in the film, as in addition to when it's sort of shown with a little kid at the beginning. But in reality, when him being the second to them as part of these executions is sort of literal. Like, when an adult would do it, for example, they would slice their whole belly open with the fucking knife. Like, they're gonna die anyways. The purpose of the second being there to slice off their head is to provide some dignity and a quick death to it, but plenty of those motherfuckers would just cut their bellies and die as the ritual suicide thing, because they didn't have a second present to do the head chopping part.
Right.
There's people that request him to be their second later in the films. But like when they have that kid hold the little fan to his belly, that's like symbolic of the dagger that if he was an adult and at all understood what was going on,
Right.
he would have used to cut his own belly. And then Ito would be there to basically just finish the job in a humane way. So it's not like he's just murdering these people for the government in the purest sense, but he also is. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think the culmination to the film, it pays off. You know, you see several bloodbaths from the past in those flashback sequences. But this is probably the only film in the Lone Wolf and Cub series where he's not just constantly cutting people down as he's traveling along, too. So you don't really get to see him unleash that fury again in the current timeline until that final battle at the hot springs. And I think it's good that they set it up that way. Obviously, in the subsequent films, there's ones where he doesn't catch a break the entire fucking time. There's literally one where all these assassins are attacking him constantly along the road, to the point where he passes out in like this little fucking random shed from exhaustion. And Daigoro has to like spit water in his mouth to revive him and shit. It's fucked up. It's so good. So good. He's going around to the little shrine, stealing the rice balls and like, you know, just chewing them up a little bit and spitting them in his dad's mouth. It's adorable. So he legit, that kid saves his fucking life. I didn't really think about that, but yeah, he saves his fucking life later on. I will agree. I forget which one of you guys mentioned it, but we don't get a lot of involvement from Daigoro in this film for the most part. He's just around looking cute, but he does a good job of it. You know, it's not too complicated with the characters, and that stands for the series as a whole. Pretty much Retsudo, Ogami Ito, and Daigoro are like the main characters that continue through each film. And then there's just random assassins and random lords trying to assassinate other lords, so they hire Ito to fuck people up. And there's like a wizard.
I wish I could do what Daigoro. I wish I could do what Daigoro did as soon as he got to that little hut where all the prisoners were. Where he just went to the mat and fell asleep.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Like I wish I could instantly fall asleep like that.
I guess you just have to travel around in a cart for long hours at a time and live off of fucking temple rice and strangers' breast milk, and you'll be ready for a nap, you know, whenever you can find one. You know what I mean? It's probably some sort of exhaustion, even though he is just riding in the cart all the time. I mean, it's not a modern baby stroller on paved roads or anything, I imagine. You know, when you can finally get a moment to just lay on a solid surface, it probably feels pretty good, you know?
It was pretty interesting how that first woman, you know, the mother, the grandmother or whatever, tried to pay him. He's like, no child, he was hungry anyways, you know, because he could just see that the crazy woman who lost her kid was just, you know, so upset and stuff that
yeah, that lady's so batshit, dude. I love her whole performance.
Yeah,
especially afterwards when she just resumes running back down the trail like a fucking psycho.
she did say, like, she's like, when I get some more money, I'll come visit you again. Like somehow she knows that she has to hire her to see her own son, but it just doesn't register. It's not her son, but yeah, it's I love it when you know she sticks her tit up and she's like take it, and he kind of looks back at his dad like, should I?
Yeah, and he just gives him that look like, do it, you know. That whole scene is
just gives him that little nod like, go ahead.
Yeah, and that scene is great because the way it's portrayed is like you don't know for sure that he didn't take the money just to be nice, or if that he was being practical because they are on the road, and so now he doesn't have to worry about feeding the kid. Because even though he gets 500 Ryo a pop for these assassinations, I get the idea that he's a frugal bro. You know, he's not really spending too much money through most of the series, unless it's just to upgrade the cart and service his sword. You know, so pretty much all their money is going towards furthering their travels to eventually take this revenge. And maybe that breast milk did actually help. You know, it beats stale temple rice or something. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. There's just so many solid scenes throughout the film. There's not too much to say plot-wise about it. I mean, that pretty much, I think we've covered it. So we could jump into favorite characters, favorite scenes, and all that before we get into the specifics.
There is another scene that I believe is messed up that I just kind of glanced over, but we didn't really talk about much. When those bandits grab that girl and just like rape her like right there in the middle of the street, and then the dad's like trying to stop, and the dude who's raping her just fucking throws his chain thing and kills the dad, and then ends up killing her while he's raping her. Fucked up scene.
It is real fucked up, but it sets up, the fact that like none of these guys deserve any mercy. They're all pretty into it and laughing about it and taking a good amount of joy in their cruelty. My favorite bit of that scene is how when he's pushing the baby cart up and he sees it going on, he steps around the front and just stands there silently so Daigoro can't see what's happening.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a sweet moment given the context, but you know what I'm saying? It kind of is. Like he doesn't seem to see that. It's one thing to see all this bloodshed and shit, but just needless cruelty like that is a little different. Yeah, it's an important scene for sure. We get, some little bits with him and the kid that are, foreshadowing of stuff we'll get later. Like I was talking about them playing around in the stream or whatever. And actually, I think that part might be in one of the later ones, but they do play around in the hot tub or the hot spring for a minute. But yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything plot-wise that we left out. It is pretty straightforward. It's mostly just setting up the origin of the character so that they don't ever need to touch on it again, because this isn't one of those series either where you have to worry about them constantly rehashing the backstory. This is it. Once you watch this one, it's done, and then you're just moving through each like sort of episodic installment in the series, where he's fighting different villains and all that stuff. And they do set him up with some better opponents in the subsequent films. They kind of almost stage like boss fights periodically throughout the films. So it's not just him cutting down a bunch of henchmen. But for being essentially a quick body count movie / origin story, I think this one does an effective job. So yeah, I guess we'll start with you, Dave. Do you have a favorite scene, favorite character? I guess if you wanted to you could do like favorite general scene, then you could do favorite violent scene, and then your favorite character.
I guess my favorite scene is in fact that scene where the old Yagyu dude was like, well, he's so sure of himself. Exactly. Who's gonna? I said it was my second favorite, but now thinking about it, for some reason, it is my favorite scene. Because it is very good. A good line about the sun being on both their backs, and the reveal about it, and then the quick swipe and the head chopped off, and that was great. But I will remember the like I said, when you see that a guy get his legs like chopped off, I can just picture in my mind the stumps still like standing in position where they were. So that's my second favorite. And when he actually takes the baby cart apart and starts using like the weaponry, that was pretty awesome too.
Yeah, I love that they didn't like blow their wad too early when it came to that stuff. Like when initially watching it, if you haven't, like, if the reputation of the film hasn't preceded itself, you could be forgiven for just assuming that's a regular old baby cart. There's no real hints that there's going to be weapons in it until he just starts fucking yanking weapons out of it.
And I guess my favorite character is Daigoro. Even though the normal person would be, the samurai in the story, but I think he kind of is like the unsung character in here. I mean, normally most people think, "Whoa, the samurai." Well, he, I don't know. No, there's something about him. The fact that he had to choose so early in life. I mean, I will remember that decision that he had to make, and he looked so cute crawling. Like he did look like he was looking at that ball for a moment, but he went over to the sword and touched it. So yeah, that's my favorite character.
It is a pretty powerful moment too. Like Jake said, where he picks him up and he's crying, and you can tell that he's like not super stoked that his kid has to live this life with him. There's a lot of emotions going through that scene, and but there's probably part of him that's also glad that he's going to have a little bit of company on the road. But yeah, it's an emotionally complex moment in the movie, and I think it sets up Daiguro's character development throughout the series really well. He really does become a proper little assassin in his own right, and they do stuff with this kid acting wise that I don't know that I've ever seen replicated with other kids of that age. I mean, he's a pretty solid little actor as the movies progress and he gets more and more stuff to do. I've always been wildly impressed with the little dude. I wish that I could find more information about what he's up to these days, or knowing our luck, he's probably dead or something. That always happens with these kids where you're like, I wonder what he went on to do. And it turns out he died of like stomach cancer 10 years later. But I hope that that's not what happened. Because he's got a good look to him too. I imagine he could have done a lot of commercials and things on the side and had a lucrative little acting career as a child actor, though I don't know if that exists in Japan in the same way that it does over here. So couldn't tell you. But what about you, Jake? Favorite scenes, favorite character?
Like I said, I really liked that scene early on. Not necessarily, I didn't necessarily like what happened to his family and his household, but again, the brilliance and the tactics on display, I really enjoyed that. The timing of everything with the bell, and again, just the look on the kid's face during that final bloodbath. Like I heard Tim from Jurassic Park. Look at how much blood. I heard that thought coming from that kid. And I think those are probably my favorite moments. There were some other good ones, like that fight in the water early on was just pretty glorious in terms of the staging and the camera work and everything. And yeah, there were a couple of other good parts. As far as favorite characters,
it's pretty thin. I mean, it's you
Yeah.
only have like a few options, really.
there's not a lot. I guess I have to go with Ito just because he really is the main dude. Yeah, he's probably the one I'll have to go for that. Yeah.
Oh shit, dude! These movies are Daiguro's only credits.
Yeah,
we just had this as a badass fucking childhood summer camp that lasted for 2 years, and then just went on to have a totally normal life.
Well, except for the 3 years he spent in the prison for gun running.
Oh, hey, he spent his time in a weaponized baby cart. I can't really fucking say that that's surprising. That's actually hilarious. Oh man. I gotta say, my favorite character outside of the obvious two being Ito and Daigoro would have to be Osan, the concubine lady at the hot spring. She's just a good element in it. She's not quite as weepy or sappy as some of the other love interest type ladies that you see in these movies, probably because she is a lady of the night and a woman of the trail in her own respect. I liked how she wasn't just like a prostitute. She was also a pillow thief, as they referred to her, where she robs the dudes afterwards too. So she's actually kind of living her own crazy path in her own way. And the more I think about that, probably not the type of lady you'd want to take on a road trip with your kid. You know what I mean? She's a prostitute and a thief. He'd probably been into a lot more than gun running if she'd been along for the ride. But yeah, man, I mean, she's probably my favorite. I'm always a fan of those types of characters in these films that, you know, they're women, so they seem harmless, but that chick probably has a body count to her name too with that line of work. I mean, you inevitably, I imagine, just have to kill dudes sometimes, you know, whether self-defense or just does. So she seems like a gnarly character that could have been explored more, but you know, she just got in the way in the later movies. So favorite scenes, you know, in terms of like, because there's really like the three main bloodbaths of the movie, right? There's the initial one when they come to frame him up. There's the secondary one when they come back to deliver the arrest warrant and like force him to commit suicide. And then there is the final one at the hot spring. In addition to that, we get that duel where he chops off the dude's head, which is a serious contender for favorite scene. It'd definitely be like in my top 3 for sure. Just because it's so glorious the way that blood is spurting out and in slow-mo with just everything about it, the setting sun back there or whatever, and that like wheat field that they're in. It's just everything I think about wanting to see when I think about samurai stuff. And I still can't quite figure out how they made it look so real, because it's clearly a dude's body, because like the hands and legs are moving and stuff, but where's his actual head? Yeah. Usually when they build up those fake like chest and shoulder areas so they can do those sort of effects, it looks kind of awkward, but they did it really seamlessly in that scene, because it looks like a real dude that had his head severed, you know. But if I had to pick an all-time favorite violent scene, it's definitely that second bloodbath where he's in the funeral robes, and everything about that whole sequence, from the moment that he like just laughs all sinisterly and tells them like, I'm not wearing these robes for me, you know, this is your funeral basically, and then just starts splattering the dudes. And then it culminates with the geniusness of him having that second robe with the hollyhock crest underneath his funeral robes, so he is literally wearing a suit of armor at the end of it, and forces their hand into just fighting him one-on-one. I think that's pretty brilliant. In terms of non-violent scenes, I'm a sucker for the part at the end where they're just going down the trail and Daigoro sees all the cute monkeys. It's a onslaught of cuteness for a solid 45 seconds of just little baby monkeys running around, and then that adorable little kid like laughing and smiling at them. That's a solid one. And then I also really like the nursery rhyme scene and the way it just all pans out. You know, it's such a weird song, them singing about rolling a hard turd covered in sand down this hill. And it triggers
and Daigoro actually starts singing it too, doesn't he?
Yeah. You know damn well it's not shown on camera, but he probably did it long enough that Ito had to tell him, like, Daigoro, you know, cut that shit out. Just cute for a minute. But we're done with it, because that's how it always is with your kids on road trips when they start singing like road trip songs. You know, it's fun for the first few passes of the song, and then you're kind of done with it. So those would be mine. I don't know. I guess to close it out, would you guys recommend this to others, and would you be interested in checking out some of the subsequent films? Because as I've adequately pointed out, they're a lot more action-packed and crazy, you know.
So, Dave, you skipped me.
Oh, I did actually, but feel free to just.
I know. I'm calling you Dave because Dave always skips me, so now you're Dave.
Anyway, favorite scenes, favorite characters.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have a favorite character, but yeah, the final scene with the cart, and then the fight, the whole fight in general, I that was my favorite scene.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Not a lot to say about it, but I want to point out that was my favorite scene.
well, thanks for weighing in, man. It is a good one. It's a standout for sure. All the violence in these is, I mean, I'd wager that you couldn't show these to too many people that whether they like these kind of films or not, once you get into those actual bloodbath sequences, it's like, damn, yeah, that's pretty impressive just on a logistical and effects standpoint, you know, and it is a pretty glorious representation of violence and bloodshed. It's, you know, I think that the movies would still be well renowned without all of that in there, but it certainly adds a flavor to them that isn't necessarily present in other samurai stuff, and it's a welcome addition for sure. And it makes it feel pretty accurate to the comic books. You guys might notice that my avatar for this evening is the manga version of them. Actually, I think that might just be a black and white rendition of the artwork by the dude that did the Criterion set, but it's pretty close to how they look in the manga. And the violence in it might not be as detailed as it is in these films, but there's certainly the indication that there's meant to be a lot of blood spray and dismemberment, you know. So it's cool that they went full bore with it in the movies. Not an easy feat in 1972. I think there's only even one scene where you see the hose poking out of the guy's outfit too. So they do a good job of covering it up because there's some pressure behind that blood spray, and that's coming from somewhere, right? You know.
Now, is this the same film as Shogun Assassin?
Shogun Assassin is basically it's basically a truncated version of the backstory events from this, and then all the bloodshed from this in the second movie edited into a new movie. It would be easy to write it off as just being like a compilation film with a new dub, but they do change certain story elements of it in Shogun Assassin. The dub itself is super enjoyable. Kroll would probably be more into Shogun Assassin because it's very much from that era of like random martial art movies on cable stations where they had kind of comedic dubs and cool soundtracks. And Retsudo's like a wizard in fucking Shogun Assassin and stuff. And they do some cool shit to change the plot around. It was also heavily sampled in like Wu-Tang songs. So I never actually saw Shogun Assassin as a kid. I saw Lone Wolf and Cub first in high school, like I said. But when I got the Criterion and watched it, I was like, oh, holy shit. Like, I've heard half of these quotable scenes as samples in Wu-Tang songs before. So that was kind of neat. I was familiar with the dub without even having watched the movie. But yeah, it's basically, it's a recut of the first two films. So it's this movie with bonus footage and rearranged to, you know, obviously pack two movies worth of this kind of action into one film. And then they rework the plot a little bit in the new dub. So definitely worth seeking out if you're a fan of old school martial arts films, sort of cheesy dubs, and the violence that you saw in this movie.
I'd rather have a cheesy dub than reading it. So
You teach their own. They're both enjoyable. I still really like Shogun Assassin. It's one, since getting it in this set, I have thrown it on at least like 3 or 4 times just to watch it as like background noise and to see the scenes. I really do like the dub and the soundtrack especially. I wouldn't mind having on disc. It's I'd almost rather fucking had less special features in this set and had them include that soundtrack or just a general soundtrack disc. Which I suppose leads us to our final particulars before we wrap this up here. What did you guys think of the production design and everything, all the costumes and sets and all that good stuff? Do you think it was
pretty solid?
Indeed, yeah. They've really got it made over there in Japan when it comes to like those onsens and different shrines and stuff, because a lot of that stuff still just exists that you can go shoot at. And then any of I imagine the house that he lived in was probably just somebody's period accurate house that they'd been restoring or something like that. Because it all looked legit. You know, I'm no expert on it, but what you see in other films that obviously are striving for accuracy seems pretty similar to this. But it's also not a house based on what we know from anime and newer Japanese cinema that you couldn't picture like a rich older couple living in modern day Japan, you know. The costuming is something I've always been particularly pleased with these films. All their clothes look, you know, accurate as far as we know to the time period and properly weathered and all that. So yeah, the weaponry looks legit. None of it looked like costume swords or anything like that. So, which I guess you should expect from the land of the katana. They should, you know, generally be able to make pretty good stunt katanas that look like legit swords, you know. I don't know. Anybody else got any thoughts on it?
Not that I know of.
What do you think of the construction of the baby cart just as a prop? I mean, it looks pretty legit as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I definitely like that. It was neat how he used that. You don't even like I just thought it was a regular cart, throughout the whole thing. And then at the end when he pulls the first part out, I'm like, oh, cool, he's got that. And then then he pulls out more. I'm like, oh shit, he's got like the whole thing wired up. And then you see that it's like kind of like the bulletproof at the bottom, whatever. I'm like, wow, it's got way more on it than I ever expected. And it was pretty neat how he added all that stuff to it.
Go gadget baby cart.
Also, he had all the brain stuff to cover his son.
Right.
His kids.
Though, this is
Stuff.
as one thing I guess this is missing is a Q, a scene with his version of Q going through all the different features of the cart.
Yeah, you never actually get that. You're always just left to assume that Ito devised this shit on the road and at some point stopped and had various craftsmen help him implement it into the cart. Like, I would love that though, if he had like some elderly Japanese inventor dude that he visited and would like, here's what we did to the cart this time. That'd be great. And who knows? There is a TV show of Lone Wolf and Cub. And then obviously many volumes of the comic. I'm only halfway through purchasing the manga, and I've been buying the omnibus. So those are like a bunch of them at one time. I think it's like I don't even know how many, like 52 volumes or something like that. It went on for a long time.
52 of the omnibus?
No, it's only like, I think
I was going to say, but it is definitely a very, very well known manga. It's one that I've never read myself, but it definitely has been kind of vaguely on the radar. It's like, I should get to that one day.
It's notable for being a favorite manga of Frank Miller's. I think that
I could see that.
Yeah, definitely a touch of influence from this stuff that went into Ronin when he did that later on, which is super fucking weird. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that hasn't gotten some type of live action movie at this point. Probably because it's so weird. But I've read a couple of volumes of the manga, and it is great. It's awesome. If you want to get real well versed with feudal Japanese terminology, not that that'll ever help you in modern day Japan, but it's there's a whole fucking, what do you call it, like not a thesaurus, but at the end there's like the whole appendix that has all the different period accurate phrases and their definitions and shit like that, because they use them liberally in the comic book, because the dude, I guess, wanted to make it accurate, which is neat. It can be cumbersome at first, but once you just learn to put a bookmark by the little appendix thing so you can flip to it quickly, it's not that bad. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, this is one that I frequently recommend to people. It's a little less, it's a little less, I guess, basic. Not that I would ever call something like Seven Samurai basic, but it's like getting into that stuff. It helps. A prerequisite to it is that you already kind of maybe have an interest in samurai stuff, or you just already like it. Lone Wolf and Cub has enough going for it and enough like visceral bloodshed and violence that it's usually a go-to for me when I recommend like a starting point with this kind of stuff for people. You're either just going to like these movies for the violence and then leave it at that, or you're going to like them for the violence but also be intrigued by other samurai movies and then venture out and maybe even watch some of the ones that aren't as graphic. Seven Samurai is probably still my favorite, and I don't think there's an ounce of actual blood in that movie. So it's not necessarily something you need, but I think that it gives these movies an edge that make them a little bit more accessible to sort of just genre fans or exploitation fans in general. And then if, it plants the seed in them to get them into more classical, traditional samurai cinema, that's great. It's a great side effect. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about the soundtrack? I guess that's the last thing to touch on here.
I liked it. Like I said, they had really good use of sound in that one scene, so the sound effects and the sound was good, very well done. But the use of music too was pretty effective, and I like the music.
And the main theme is pretty iconic as well, where it's kind of like just traditional Japanese music, but fed through like 70s style guitar distortion. So it just gives it this like nasty ass grindhouse fucking vibe to it. That's just perfect. I don't know why they didn't use more of it in Shogun Assassin, but the weird synthy score they did for that one to take its place is pretty rad. But that main like Lone Wolf and Cub theme, where it's that chill like beat with the guy noodling on the guitar and stuff, almost playing it like a shamisen. It just sounds so cool. Maybe it even is one of those fed through distortion. I don't know. That'd be super rad if that was the case, but I've not looked into it. I don't know. Any of you guys, Dave, Kroll, any thoughts on the soundtrack?
Not really.
Not really. I guess when I go through a second watch, I'll pay more attention to the music, per se, because I wasn't really entirely paying attention to it, because well, I was definitely reading the thing as I went along. So it's not that I have a problem with subtitled films. I've gotten used to them over time. It's just you still have to like read more than watch at times, and having to listen to music at the same time, I might be able to listen more on a second watch than I would a first time. So.
Oh yeah, or just throw it on in the background while you like organize movies or something and just listen to it. But they do a good job of not, because at the same time they could have been way too liberal with that Gracie Grindhouse vibe of that main theme and had that run through the whole movie. Most of the music is pretty just traditional Japanese music that you tend to hear in these, but that little added modern touch of the distortion on that main theme when they're noodling around on the guitar, the shamisen or whatever it is a nice touch. It makes it feel modern, but the fact that it is still traditional Japanese music keeps it rooted in like that samurai shit. I honestly don't think this would have been a movie. I mean, I wouldn't have complained if it had like a 70s porno funk straight up grindhouse soundtrack. It'd probably still be pretty cool. But I like that they didn't get too heavy handed with the modern music, and it keeps it
yeah, that would have given it a more cheesy factor.
I couldn't tell that it was 70s music myself, but you know.
Oh, you can hear guitar distortion on the.
I didn't even really pay that much attention to.
It's all through the opening sequence.
It's kind of just background stuff that I guess it does what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be not taking away from the movie and background. So I didn't really pay that much attention to it. So.
Well, the only place the 70s style music shows up is in the title sequence where he's like walking down the white path and there's like the broiling water on one side and the flames on the other side, and they play that main Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. I kind of dug that.
I fucking love the title sequence to this. It's iconic. But that's what I was talking about with the distortion on it. It's still like just Japanese music. It just sounds like if there was no distortion, it would just sound like any of those songs where they're kind of noodling around on a string instrument, but just adding that little bit of feedback gives it that little 70s zest that I appreciate for sure. That about does it, man. I mean, I think we covered it. If you're into some sword slang and action and some blood splatter and random secondhand fucking road trip breast milk, give this movie a go. And check out Shogun Assassin.
Alrighty. I guess we'll go around and do our outros. So, Mo, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Mo. I have a channel called Retro Cult Home Video, secondary channel called Schlockaholics. I don't have anything immediately planned to come out in the future other than some little quickie reviews for some indie horror that I've been trying to watch, working on whittling down the backlog a little bit. because it's just the more movies I collect, the more it bothers me when at least with the indie stuff, when I have it all piled up. So I'm going to try to take that down and, get some reviews out the door for it. In addition to that, me and Kroll are going to be launching a new series here in the next month or two called BoobTube Chronicles, where we are going to review individual seasons of TV shows. First one that we're going to be starting off with is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I imagine we'll probably also just tack the movie on at some point. I think both of us have probably seen it enough that we could talk about it while we're talking about, or as like a lead into the show.
The first season's kind of short, so I mean, we could do the movie and then the first season. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We could probably bang them all out in one go, and then we'll be into the series proper, And I believe we have 7 seasons of that, so at least 7 segments of that will be dropping over the next probably 3 months. I imagine it'll take us to do it all. And then wherever that goes from there is anybody's guess. We've got tons of good shows to, put on the slate for that. I think it'll be a fun way for us to actually be able to document our thoughts on those, because they're obviously, we're never going to do like an Inside Movies Galore for season 3 of fucking Stargate or something. But anybody that's wants to jump in on those, whether you are freshly watched on the show or you've seen it enough times to have memory to go through it with you, we'll easily be able to lead you through it, because we'll be watching the shit and it'll be fresh for us. So yeah, that could be a lot of fun times in store there, but that's pretty much what I got going on.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Totobuki Jake. I live here in Central Virginia, where where I am the co-host of Symptom Sin versus the World, a YouTube channel dedicated to physical media in all of its many shapes and forms. We have, and of course, Brandon's not here tonight, so I'll try to pick up the slack here a little bit with some of the various things we got going on. We do our monthly anime discussion. This month we'll be covering Clamp School Detectives, so that'll be kind of fun. That's one that I don't think any of us had seen, so that'll be an interesting first time, coming on the heels that of one that was quite nostalgic for some of us, which was check out last month's episode on the Slayers. We also have our Versus Awards, the second year of those. The voting ends August 15, so we have slightly less than a week for y'all to get your votes in for that. And voting's been ongoing, and we've got some interesting stuff going on with that so far. Go to the Facebook page and to make your votes. Also got, we got other things. We do pick up videos, and we're working on a video. At the very least, it looks like it'll be myself, Brandon, and Brittany. I'm hoping more people will chime in, but we'll be doing a discussion and ranking of anime openers. So that'll be kind of fun. Even though Dave likes to pretend they don't exist, they do exist.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get together a list for that. I'm sure
cool, yeah.
Kind of basic, but I do have ones that I really love.
They exist.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be some fun. What's that?
They exist as background noise for the most part, so I'll give you that.
Yeah, the point of a good opener is to really get you into a show, and and I would say that goes for any kind of show, American shows, British shows, any most great shows have a good
I agree
opener.
with you.
There are some that don't, but
there are some shows where I'll watch the opening like every episode,
right.
10 seasons, and I'm still watching the opening. Like Supernatural, I fucking just love the song. I love that opening.
I do.
And then there's others where it's like, okay, I heard it a couple times, and now I want to skip it.
Yeah. Well, a few for me, non-anime ones for me would be Cheers, X-Files, and Downton Abbey. All of those had like phenomenal openers. But anyway, what's that?
There I agree with. I just haven't found too many Japanese animation openers or closers that impressed me. that I want to repeat listen to them.
Well, I'll be sure to give everyone a link to my playlist if I figure out
I
how
don't
to
watch
do
Full Metal.
it. But anyway, and also just
And Claire's not a
go ahead and
fan.
move things along here. I also work full time at one job, and then I co-founded a native plant nursery, and I work there much of the time too. And we're mourning that the local power company decided to cause us some trouble this week. They cut a tree and dropped branches on our material. But anyway, that's pretty messed up. But anyway, so that's enough of that. And then of course I like to come on this show and shoot shit with these fine folks and see some movies that I might have not otherwise gotten around to seeing or to revisit ones. Again, this would have been a great excuse and opportunity to really launch into this set. But while I made some rearrangements over the weekend that free me up a little bit for computer usage, I still don't have that TV access, and I still got to figure that out. But
once you
anyway,
get into the second one, I think that you'll be rolling right through them. And if you don't get to it soon, we'll find an excuse at some point here.
Yeah.
You know, it's once we get back to voting, there's no reason that the second one couldn't make it in here at some point. Or
one thing I really want to do. One thing I really want to do is to just straight up dive into my Criterion collection. But I want to fully watch them. I want to watch all the bonus features. And there's a reason why I like that collection. There's a lot of bonus features. It takes a while.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of upcoming films as well.
Podcast.
What's that?
You could always do a Criterion podcast, and that will get you through all that stuff.
Well, I started trying to do that, and I ended up. I have a handful of videos on this channel for my Criterion run-throughs, and maybe one day. I don't have the time to give that amount of effort again, but again, the first question is just getting to the TV. Even to watch the movie, let alone the extra 5 to 7 hours I need for the bonus features, you know?
Yeah, it's a time
TV in
sink
your
for
own,
sure.
man.
But speaking of
Gotta
our
figure out where to
films,
put it.
next week we are going to be doing Hawk the Slayer as the next film in my series here, which also kicks off.
Cool.
Or it is the first film that we don't have to read, and there's no more films we have to read this month. So the last three are all in English. And Hawk the Slayer, I think that you guys that haven't seen it are thoroughly going to enjoy it, and I know for a fact me and Brandon are going to have fun with that revisit. So, but yeah.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Kroll. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Ron. I don't work. I'm disabled, but I love movies. I love TV shows. Love reading and playing games. And I come on this podcast, and I come on a podcast on Sunday, Delusions Grinder, with Tammy and Dave. And Tammy's not here tonight, but that's Dave's fiance. And another guy, Philip, and sometimes Mo, and discuss movies there. And I'm also sometimes coming. I've done twice the Japanese anime series. So I've been on that podcast, and then a new podcast that Mo came out with it. He forgot to mention was he did Best of Vampires movies.
Yeah. We did our 5 vampire films, for Cinema Log.
Next week we'll be doing the best our favorite sci-fi non-franchise movies. So just 5 separate movies that have nothing to do with anything else. And
looking forward to that.
Yeah,
I got some bangers.
I have not been on, and I also what we did a little. I've done a full moon movie with you, and I've also going to be doing another full moon movie with you eventually. And
arcade baby.
Yeah, and I haven't been on US Lockaholics yet, but possibly we'll be doing that too as well. So I'm popping around here and there around. You know, you never know where I might pop up in someone's podcast, but you know, look out, I might be there.
Yeah, we're gonna get those
Good
Swatchaholics
times.
off the ground. We've really only done one test episode because we like came up with the idea right before Cody had to go away for a week to shoot a bunch of movies in Tennessee or whatever, and then Brandon got sick right afterwards. So it's a little slow to get it off the ground,
Yeah.
but we'll get it.
Oh, and Mel, I don't think you mentioned your long disrupted, but
Let's
theoretically,
not curse that motherfucker. Okay, let's keep that to ourselves till it happens.
okay, we'll do that. And
Brandon's feeling better, so with any luck,
good deal.
we'll
I-
get that done.
Are you
I
big fan?
missed that vampire one myself, but I think
was
we
good.
already covered the best vampire film on this channel. We did Let the Right One In, and that is a pretty solid,
I like the
solid
remake.
film.
I
I like Let Me In. It's a good one. I like
it
the original
definitely-
better.
It definitely didn't make my top 5. It is a
Yeah.
good one, and it didn't quite make honorable mention either. But it is a
Mhm.
good movie. I mean, it's not that I don't like it. Just vampires. There's so many vampire movies out there. that
There are.
You could easily make a top 20, top 50, and not
And-
cover even a small portion of all the vampire movies out there. So,
And just right off the top of my head, just throw out a few that I probably would have brought in and discussed. Kronos, What We Do in the Shadows. Let's see here. I had another one just a moment ago. Byzantium, I think was the name of one. That was a pretty good one.
Me and
I think
Dane
actually
shared,
all 3 of the ones that you've
What's that?
mentioned were on Dane's.
Me and Dane
Yeah.
shared two movies.
Mhm.
Me and Mo shared a movie, and then one of my honorable mentions was one he chose. So it was we were all
Thirst.
on the same page with the
Not the bad one, the good one.
because we had Lost Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Both me and Mo had that on our list, and then me and Dane had Nosferatu and the original Dracula 1931. So yeah,
Nosferatu, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a good
Oh.
spread, yeah. There was enough
We both
overlap
had-
to be fun, but not too
I-
much that it made it like one trick
Yeah.
pony stuff, you know.
yeah.
Okay, I got to say, like, Nosferatu is good, and I definitely appreciate its importance. But I've always loved the one that was based on it, Shadow of the
Oh,
Vampire.
I agree.
We
Love
talked about that for a good
Dane
bit.
Yeah.
actually added that as well to his list.
And not
But,
for nothing, Let the Right One In almost made my top 5. It got narrowly
Good
edged
deal.
out by From Dusk Till Dawn, but yeah, I went more like my era of vampire shit, so stuff from the 80s, and then I had some cool honorable mentions.
Right.
And of course, you had Fright Night, and I had honorable mention of Fright Night and the reboot. So
Right. The reboot was fun. And
I
I
love
think
the
those
reboot.
list
Good
videos are
times.
going to be a good time because it gives us all a chance to throw out, movies we love and talk briefly about them. And they don't require a bunch of prep work, right? Like, what your 5 favorite of this or that genre is. And it's easy enough to just get together and video club at the shit like we did, where we just kind of loosely shoot the shit about it, So hopefully we'll be able to
Right.
get some people on for those. I've got a whole list of ideas for them that I made, like non-franchise slashers, creature features, a lot of horror-based ones, but then I would like to do like top 5 animated features, top 5 boner comedies, all types of different ones. I mean, just any subgenre of films you can think of. Top 5 mustaches in movies, that could be a good one for us to do.
Yes.
Smokey
Yes,
and the
indeed.
Let's
Bandit.
be honest, that's
Smokey
the
and the
closest we're
Bandit,
going to get
baby.
to mustache matinee for a while.
Burt Reynolds is the man, dude. He's got that mustache.
Oh, he would be on there. On the
Hercules.
list.
Burt Reynolds probably. I'm not a mustache man, but that man has a good mustache.
Daniel Day-Lewis could probably take several slots, so we would have to definitely make a rule that each mustache can only appear once. That goes for you too, Tom Atkins.
I know you could just name every Burt Reynolds film, or just a few.
No, Burt Reynolds, Tom Selleck, and Sam Elliott, and that's
Well,
like your top 20 there.
One that I think will be fun and like a fun companion to like our Castaway review will be when we do like top 5 survival films. That's
And
definitely one
we
that I'm looking
need to
forward
get Mo to watch A Thousand Ways to Die in the West because that had
It's
the
on my
best
list, dude. I actually
mustache
wrote it
song
on a
ever.
post-it.
And like I said, the second I heard that song, I was like, Mo would fucking love this. And you still haven't seen it. It's been years, but
You always tell me about it, and then I'll like remember the title, but then I always, for some reason, misremember it as being like some fucking TNT show or something like that. You know, where it's like those random list shows they would do, like top 5 animals that'll fucking kill you. You know, like there's always those kind of fucking shows. So that title just for some reason always makes me think it's one of those, and then I kind of forget about it. But it's on there. It's on the list.
Thousand Ways to Die in the West, man. It's a hilarious comedy, and it's got Doogie Howser singing the mustache song. And yeah,
Well, fuck me. I gotta see that
Oh,
immediately.
yeah, I gotta see that.
you haven't seen it either, Jake?
What's that?
You ever seen it either?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's a great film.
I have.
I know which one you're talking about, but I haven't seen it.
I'm not a huge Western fan, but you don't need to be. I mean, it is just great. It is just a great film. It kind of makes fun of Western films, but I don't know. It's fun. It's just a fun fucking movie. I actually wouldn't mind visiting it again. I've only seen it once.
Shows up with the DeLorean in it too. It's priceless.
That's great. I get the feeling you would like a lot of the genre bending westerns, Kroll, where it's like not a western first. Well, it is a western first and foremost, but then it's like a horror film also, or a sci-fi.
I mean, I love
comedy,
Westworld.
you know?
I love Westworld, and that's like kind of a
steampunk western. One of the best westerns ever made.
Futuristic, so
Briscoe County is the shit.
That is the shit. That is steampunk western. Great. And John Aston plays a Doc Brown knockoff, Professor Wickwire. Yeah.
Wild Wild West with Will Smith was good.
I had to go fucking see that in
you're
the theater.
talking about this?
Oh no, that's the old one. That's a nice looking set though.
Yeah, Will Smith got real pale. Is there a giant spider in that one?
Yeah.
Maybe they turned him into a vampire.
I was gonna say he's pulling a Michael Jackson.
Dude, no, the real talk. I saw Wild Wild West in the theater, the Will Smith one, as like the final celebration for science camp when I went one year. It was like a 2-week long science camp that I had to go to. And I actually kind of forgot that I signed up for it. And then my parents made me fucking go to it, which sucked at first, but it turned out to be really fun until the final day where they thought that the best idea was for us to fly on a fucking little 7-person airplane and then go see Wild Wild West in the theater. So like I was probably the first half of the movie, I was still fucking horrified from being in the airplane.
Dude, I like flying, but that plane is just too fucking small.
No, I mean, I think I could handle the big jets now, but
yeah,
dude, that put me off flying for so long because those little 7-person planes, when it drops like 15 feet because of turbulence, you feel every foot of that.
Yeah, that would.
And then like there's only one parachute, and it was strapped to the back of the pilot's seat. So I was like, what the fuck? As soon as I saw that, I swore
They're taunting you.
I was gonna die.
They're taunting you. They're letting you know that I can escape, but you can't.
Fuck that. If we started going down, I would have been fighting that dude for that.
I was like, motherfucker, I'm going to stab your ass and steal your fucking parachute.
I was only like 12, so he'd have probably won, but I could have at least like latched myself onto his waist and tried to ride him down or something.
In any case, my name is David Streggy. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this journey of vengeance and bloodthirsty violence. But we've had fun here on Inside Movies Galore. Going through various films and shooting the shit about them. So hopefully you'll come back with us next week. But I
Yo, come back now, you hear?
Also, we moonlight on I moonlight on a different channel along with Crow on Sundays, where we do kind of the same thing, where we discuss various films. In fact, this coming Sunday, we'll be discussing Clive Barker's Nightbreed.
Oh shit! I might have to free up my Sunday.
Yeah, Tammy picked it, and she was hoping you would join us.
I love Nightbreed, and I can bring a bunch of Cradle of Filth and Indian talk to the table too.
I've never seen it, so it'll be fun. It's my best friend Jeff's. It's one of his favorite movies, and yeah, so I definitely it'll be cool to see it.
There was definitely a time when I bought most of my T-shirts at Hot Topic, and I would have said that it was my favorite movie. I had my Nightbreed phase for sure.
My condolences.
And also,
he made a D&D character from Nightbreed, so
Yeah, that seemed to be the other demographic of fucking people that really like the movie is like sort of nerds and then like little edgy fucking dorky metal kids, you know. It's a great film though, and David Cronenberg.
He's definitely metal and nerd, so
can't wait. Yeah, I'll free up my Sunday, so I'll join you for that, Dave. Sorry, go ahead.
Under the same guys and channel, I also do my own video pickups and my own video reviews, so check some of those out. And hopefully we'll have some nice surprises around the corner for you to come and enjoy us talking up a storm about these. So so glad to do it with friends that love to enjoy similar likes and stuff like that. So thank you for helping me pass the time. And I think some of us really enjoy having something to do on these Tuesdays, you know.
Oh yeah, dude. It's been great. And this anniversary celebration, I think, has been going absolutely as well as I hoped it would. I mean, you know, not every film has been a hit with every member of the group, but everybody's months have been diverse and have really showcased our individual tastes in films. And I think everyone's done a real good job of curating their lists and everything. So looking forward to completing my month and then all the months that follow, you know.
Definitely, man.
Indeed.
So like, share, and subscribe. And hopefully y'all can have a good night like weekend. But let us know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion. And we'll see you all next time, ladies and gents. So everyone say good night.
Oyasu-na-sai.
Good night, Gracie.
Give me 15 minutes. I'll be over there. Dave will recreate that.